So John, part of this walk is about aspirations, and I'm wondering what some of your aspirations are for the planet.
Well, as a planet walker, my aspirations are that even though I don't know what the outcome is, I aspire that the walk, my learning, and my interactions with people and the land, and as we are all the environment, that the outcome is something outrageous, and I mean righteous for all of us. And that's my aspiration for the planet. Being a planet walker is about raising our consciousness to understand that we are life on a planet. My aspirations for you and for everyone.
Namaskar. Vishe Shanti. Salve
Hello from the children of planet Earth.
That journey across North America, you said it took about 7 years to complete.
Yes.
Are there any, how do you think you were different as a person at the beginning of the 7 years compared to the end of the 7 years?
Oh, that's a good question. That's a really good question, because at the beginning of my journey, I felt that environment was really about pollution. That's why I started walking, actually, because of the oil spill in San Francisco Bay. Tankers collided. And that was 1971. And it was, I think, the beginning of the environmental movement in 1969, when the blowout happened in Pacific off of California coast, and it became I guess a rallying point, ocean pollution, and how that impacted people and the land. And so that's what I thought, I pretty much thought that those were the things that we really needed to focus on. As I progressed, I realized that there were other things as well. And that was I guess, walking up past the Trident missile facilities in Washington, I realized that the idea of nuclear war and war was part of that. It became, something that was something that we had to deal with as well. And so when I got to Montana and started my master's degree, my paper that I wrote was in research I did was War, Peace, and Environment, and a pilgrimage of change. And how this was going to change, I still had no idea. By the time I reached Wisconsin to start my graduate studies, my PhD, doctorate in environmental studies, I looked a lot at environmental philosophy and who had changed the way we think about where we live. And the one thing I hadn't heard was that environment was really about people. All I understood was that environment was still something in the physical world, but that people were the caretakers. And so you could be a conservationist and you were like a caretaker of the resources. But what really struck me was the experience I had on the road, my informal education. And that taught me that people were part of the environment. And from that, I gathered how we treated each other was really how we're treating the environment. And if we look at that, if we think about that, how we treat each other is really how we're treating the environment, then we get to a place where we say, well, treating each other is the first opportunity that we have to make a difference in the environment. How we treat each other is that first opportunity. So if we exploit, if we oppress, if we kill each other over resources, whatever we think is important to us, that's going to manifest in the physical environment around us, because we're doing it to ourselves. And all these years, for 17 years, I had been silent, walking across America, listening, learning, and it struck me then that I needed to start speaking when I reached the East Coast. And so I chose Earth Day to start speaking, because I wanted to remind myself that I was going to speak for the environment. And the environment had changed from being just about pollution and loss of species and habitat, which are all very important things, and we should work to ameliorate those situations. But that environment was much more. It was about human rights and civil rights and gender equality and economic equity and education equity. It was really about how we all lived together and how we treated each other. Wow, those guys are moving. So I started speaking, and that was my message that first day. And I hope it's my message every other day, because I firmly believe that.
I think in your life you've cultivated a message of kindness, and at least that's how I've experienced you since I've been lucky enough to share time with you. Do you have any advice for people who are looking to find more kindness, either in their lives or spread more kindness to other people?
Well, it's a practice, I would say. And we're not all expert at it. Some of us are. Some of us are just really very good at it. And some of us are still learning how to do it. I consider myself someone still learning. And so it's a practice. You can get up each morning and think about it, that we're going to practice kindness. I think that's a good thing. And get out and walk. I hope that the world realizes that we're all planet walkers, and begin to planet walk, especially young people, to walk where you are. You don't have to walk across the continent or walk across the country. You can just walk in your neighborhood and be a planet walker. Planet walkers walk in the spirit and hope that it's part of their education and the spirit and hope that they can benefit all of us. And maybe we don't know how at the moment, how that's going to work. But I think being kind to one another is a good start.
Could you talk about some of the specific benefits of walking?
Well, I've been walking since 1976 on long walks, and so now I'm 77 and I'm still walking. And of course you say I walk like a machine, and I say I walk like an old machine. But it's good. It's good. It's good for us to walk. I mean, we were made to walk if we can. So, some of us are not blessed with that ability, but they get outside in the air. Being outside in the air, I think Dick Gregory said that. Was a comedian and activist in the United States, Dick Gregory. He said that being outside really saved him. And so getting out in nature is a good thing. And if you can, walk.
So John, part of the reason how we met and part of the reason why we know each other is we're working on this Interstellar Foundation project. And I'd like to know if humans found a spaceship from another extraterrestrial civilization, and that spaceship had a message on it, what would be the part of the message that you'd be most interested to know about?
Yeah. Well, that's a great question. Acknowledging how we know each other is because of the foundation, Interstellar Foundation, that you started, and I joined as a board member, one of the founding board members. Well, first I would say that, many people see the Earth and our planet as a spacecraft or a spaceship, and they call it Spaceship Earth. And so I'm thinking that anything that we send as a Spaceship Earth as a message to another civilization, another spaceship in the galaxy and outside the galaxy, and it's really who we are. So, and who we are that's in the present, who we are, who we have been or who we had been, and who we aspire to be. What are our aspirations? And not for just, our personal aspirations as I'd like to get another Xbox, or I want to make more money and I want to go on more trips. Those things are. But the aspirations we have for all of humanity and all our relations, and so who we are, those aspirations, as a race of people, and I use race advisedly because when I say race, I mean all of us. And no matter what color or religion or faith, that we're all in this together. We're all planet walkers in that sense. So yeah, I think for me and for some of us on your board, Nick, I think the aspirations of our children are really the important message that we would put in the bottle, and put in the golden record, or whatever technology we have.
I think it's a beautiful sentiment, and definitely something that we're going to try to gather as many of the aspirations of young people as we can. John, you've got probably more than most a window into non-verbal communication that I think most of us don't really sort of fully grasp. You know, part of the difficulty of this project is taking what we understand to be ourselves and communicating that to something that is completely other from ourselves. And, you know, we're not able to use language. There's no context that's provided between us and whoever's going to receive this message. Could you talk about sort of what communication means for you and how sort of non-verbal communication, how you've thought about this?
Sure. Using words to express something that cannot be expressed with words. That's an interesting conundrum. But I think that human communications on the planet is mostly non-verbal. I think it's a lot has to do with the electromagnetic fields that we each, all of us generate, that life generates, and you know, that makes something alive. And the other thing for me, especially when I went to school, was context. That we were all understood. There was a place where we were, and our communication was going to be about that. So if you extrapolate that and look at us all here and say, we can identify the place where we all are and extrapolate from that so that our conversation is about that. It's within the realm of who we are. So finding that, identifying that who we are, and
that's I think a question that I thought was going to be Well, when the project started a year ago, I thought it was going to be easy to explain what it meant to be human. And I think the more I think about it, and over the months, that becomes more and more difficult to sort of even begin. Have you got any insights into trying to explain what it means to be human?
I would say if to be human is a process or a journey of learning and making mistakes and learning from each other and kind of bumbling along on our journey together.
Yeah, we're definitely all on a journey together, and always important that we all remember that nobody really has the answers, and we all get these relatively short around about, if you're lucky, 100-year time periods to experience reality together, and nobody has any, nobody solved it. What do you think success would look like if the project was successful in your eyes?
And there would be success is that there would be a gathering of knowledge and aspirations, and it would be on a spacecraft that was headed out of our solar system. So, and that we all were part of it, and that all our aspirations, if we could feel here on Earth that we put this message in a bottle, the more people that understood that, who could feel that, that would be success in my eyes.
And I have asked you what your aspirations about sort of the walk are, on a larger scale. What are your aspirations for the planet?
Well, my aspirations are that more and more people become planet walkers, in the spirit and hope that we can benefit each other and the planet, and that one day we will benefit the planet in such a way that I don't know what it'll look like, but it'll be awesome and unreasonable and just fantastic. I was kind of restless, and so my first trip away from home was to Chicago. And I worked many different jobs. Railroad brakeman, hospital technician, laboratory technician, studying oncology, and postal carrier, janitor, sanitation man, call them garbage men during that time. And I eventually went to California to become a hippie. And that's what I did. my parents, my father's side, is from Antigua, and he was born in Panama when my grandparents went there to help build the Panama Canal. So he was, they spoke Spanish. But in the United States they didn't speak Spanish. They quickly decided that Spanish was not the language to speak for their family, and they spoke English. So I have an affinity to speak Spanish, and so when I walked through South America, it was a very important part of me that needed to learn the language. But, you know, it took me to stop riding in cars after seeing that oil spill and stop talking to really look at myself and really discover who I was, and all the personalities and persons that I had been pretending to be just kind of dropped away over the miles and years of listening and being in the environment. And I chose to be in areas of wilderness areas that had few people and had been mostly left unspoiled by human interventions. And I think that was a time of healing to me. And it continues, I think, to this day. Although I had studied, once I came out of the wilderness, I studied for my undergraduate degree in Oregon, and then walked to Montana to study for my master's degree in environmental studies. I was so pleased that you could learn what you need to be taught about the environment. And then finally I got to the University of Wisconsin, and that was working on a doctorate in environmental studies at the Gaylord Nelson Institute for Environmental Studies. And Gaylord Nelson was credited for beginning the environmental movement as a politician. Of course, more people before him and events before him were part of that movement as well. And there was an oil spill in Santa Barbara that sparked it. And then there was Silent Spring by Rachel Carson, who talked about what was going on with the environment, pollution, unseen. So these were my heroes. When I got to Madison, Wisconsin to study environment, I learned that John Muir, who we had helped start all the national parks, had walked there from Florida. I was so amazed. He came to Wisconsin, the university there, to study engineering. He was quite a character. In the historic
society, the Storyteller Society, where they have a clock that he made. And this clock is made out of wooden gears, and he was attached to a bed that raised him up and slid him out of the bed. He would slide out of the bed, and as he was sliding out of the bed, a book would open at the last page he was reading. So he was quite an engineer and quite an outdoors person. One of the things that I studied oil spills, and I wrote about oil spills in my dissertation. And at the time, a lot of my colleagues said, "John, why are you writing about oil spills? No one's really interested in them. And so, what kind of job do you think you'd get?" And still silent, I made it known that I really wasn't looking for a job. I just really wanted to know about oil spills. And it was soon after that, people began writing and asking for the data that I had collected. And the U.S. Coast Guard called to see if they could get me to come and they could talk to me about oil spills. And at the university, they had to challenge us with, "Well, you know, John Francis, he's here, but he doesn't talk." And said, "Well, we just want him to come out, see Washington, D.C. and help us out here on this oil pollution protection law." Well, you know, John doesn't use motorized vehicles. And I know someone said, "Well, is there anybody normal at your university? Help us figure this out." And my major professor, another John Steinhardt, he talked to them. You know, he figured that out. Eventually, I went to work for the Coast Guard for the Oil Pollution Act of 1990. He helped write new oil regulations for the country, for the United States. And I just have to imagine how I felt, because I had started talking earlier. And I should tell you, I started talking because I realized that environment was not just about pollution, not just about loss of species. Those are important things. The environment in the United States, I have to walk on the left-hand side, but in South Africa, you walk on the right-hand side of police traffic. Don't get confused. Yeah, well, you know, environment was not just about trees and bees, although they're important and bees are really important. I had about 40 hives that I took care of for someone, and really learned about apiaries and how important bees are. But if people are part of the environment, then how we treat each other is also very important. Because as we treat one another, either oppress or exploit each other, then those things manifest in the physical environment around us. And so environment became, to me, about human rights and civil rights, gender equality and economic equity, education equity, and all those things, the way it was you relate. And it's actually about kindness and love. Kindness, love, and cooperation. We are social animals. Now, I know Charles Darwin wrote about the survival of the fittest. And I was on a ship with his great-granddaughter, Sarah. And we noted that, yes, it was about survival of the fittest, but Charles Darwin thought that the fittest were the ones that could cooperate. He was not tooth and claw, but that it came out during the war, his book. It was touted as an example of a way to explain our aggression. And the survival of the fittest, and the fittest were the ones who could be on top. Darwin really meant the ones who could love each other and cooperate. So when I came to the Coast Guard, and I explained to them, and it was good. I could talk as I started talking on Earth Day. And to say all those things about environment, realizing I was going to speak for the environment now, and that the environment is about all those things I said, human rights and civil rights, all the ways we relate to each other. So that's when I showed up at the Coast Guard. That was me. Well, I had a database that spanned decades of oil spills. It's important to the Coast Guards. I also had this sensibility, and I was relieved to find out that many of the commanders in the Coast Guard had the same sensibility. So I spent a year working at the Coast Guard, and when it was time for me to leave, they asked me to stay another year. So that I had already started moving. There's this inertia. The body at rest tends to remain at rest, and a body at motion tends to remain in motion. I had already started to move in the direction of the Caribbean and South America, sailing through the Caribbean to Antigua on a friend's yacht, and working as a cook until I came to Antigua, and I stayed there for 2 years, reconnecting with my father's family. Until I left and sailed to Barbados, where there was the first one of the early COP meetings, COP 5, I think it was. And now we're 27 or something. Wow. See what progress has been made. At least we're still talking. So there's been some. Once I left Barbados, I went to South America, to Venezuela. And I walked the length of South America, through the Amazon. Lots of adventures, lots of wonderful people. And at that time, had been made a UN Goodwill Ambassador for the United Nations Environment Program, as well as an ambassador for the GLOBE program, Global Learning and Observation to Benefit the Environment. That was an education program based on geographical information systems, and K through 12 grade schools could learn about the environment and share what they learn with each other, and scientists that are looking at climate. It's what I'm partnering with the GLOBE program again here in South Africa. Hope to take that partnership all the way to the Sudan. And I was fortunate enough to meet someone that decided that they could put up with my planet walking if I stuck around long enough to raise a camera, which I did. So my wife puts up with me in my planet walk. I would say she rejoices in it, but it means we're not together when I'm now talking. My kids are in their 20s, and the youngest one is 16, but he's away in boarding school he wanted to go to, so he made all the applications and got accepted. So, very blessed and feel gratitude. And that's my story. That's my story. I was born a poor black child. And in the end, that's who I'll always do. No more, no less.
Okay, I'm so happy you're here. Ubuntu, you know? That means if it weren't for you, I couldn't be. And my name is the Planet Walker, John Francis, the Planet Walker. And some people just call me Dr. John, because I have a PhD in environmental studies. And some people just call me, hey, you. But a lot of people call me the Planet Walker. And I started my journey in California, in the United States. I saw an oil spill and I gave up riding in cars because I saw the birds dying in the sea and the fish dying and the seals dying. So I said, I'm not driving cars anymore. And for 22 years, I walked in North America and the United States. And eventually, I walked across the United States from the Pacific to the Atlantic. Now, there's something funny about my walking. I play the banjo, and I'm going to play that banjo for you in just a minute. But when I gave up riding in cars, people were so upset. They say, John, what are you doing? Why are you stopping riding in cars? What are you trying to do? One person's not going to make a difference. And I argued with them all the time. I said, oh yes, one person can, one person. I was arguing back and forth all the time until one day on my birthday. That birthday was when I turned 27 years old. Actually, this is the month. The 23rd of this month is going to be my birthday.
Happy birthday!
Thank you. But I won't be 27. I will be 77. And I have been walking all this time. Now, when I got to the east coast of the United States, I started talking. So that was 17 years from when I was silent to when I started talking again. And the reason I was silent, I thought I was going to be silent for one day on my birthday. You know, because I was arguing and arguing. You know, I was tired of arguing. But that one day, the one day, I was silent. You know what I learned? Anybody know what I learned from being silent that one day? Well, I learned that I had not been listening. I would listen just enough to think I know what someone was going to say. And then I would stop listening to them. I'd stop listening to them and I'd think, oh, I know I can say that better. I know that answer. And I wouldn't hear what they had to say. That ended communication. Oh my, I said. Maybe I should do this another day because I'm learning so much about what other people want to say. I'm learning so much. I'll do it another day and another day and another day until a month went by. And I said, oh, I'm going to be silent for a whole year. And then I will have learned so much I'll be able to talk. But that year came around. And I know very little. I still wanted to learn more. And so I didn't speak for another year. And another year. And another year. How many years?
4 years.
I did not speak for 17 years. 17 years, can you believe it? Hard to believe, but you can look on the website, the Planet Walk website, and there would be a TED Talk, a talk of me explaining to you what that was like. And so my first words after walking across the United States, after studying at university, each place I stopped to get my PhD, to become a doctor, my first words were, thank you for being here. Which is what I say to you. Thank you for being here. Because if you weren't here, there would be no communication. I could talk and I could rant, but you wouldn't hear. No one would hear. So I'm thanking you for being here to hear this message. Now, what did I learn walking across North America? Studying environment. Studying environment about the trees and the rainforest and the ocean and pollution. When I started out, I thought the environment was just about pollution and saving the trees and the birds. It is about that. It is about that. That's very important. But something else I learned about environment was that environment was about people. People are part of the environment. We're part of the environment. And so what was the special learning? Well, I learned, which I hadn't heard before, that if people were part of the environment, then how we treat each other, how we treat one another is really going to manifest into the physical environment around us. And we're going to have all those problems. So if we exploit each other, if we oppress each other, things are going to happen. Climate change is going to happen. Pollution's going to happen. So environment to me became about being kind, became about being compassionate, to understand that we are all connected. And so it wasn't only about saving the trees and saving the rainforest and the fish and the air. It was about human rights, human rights and civil rights. And civil rights and gender equality and education equity, economic equity, all the ways we relate to each other. Oh my goodness, all the ways. So if we are kind to each other, if we're able to be kind to each other, that's a big start. That's a big start. And I know you guys are like that too. You are kind to one another. So, right? Kind to one another. Who is kind to one another? Okay. Well, it's a practice. You just don't get it from that, like that. You have to practice it. And sometimes we don't make it, sometimes we do, so we just practice. Keep practicing. Keep practicing. So I'm going to end my talk today with a little banjo music that I played and which came to me when I was silent. So see if you can hear the silence and the walking in the road, if you can hear that. Thank you very much. Remember to try to be kind to each other. All right.
Is there anything in particular that you're thinking about now?
I'm thinking about how this is the beginning, auspicious beginning. That's a big word for a planet walker.
Uh-huh.
But from Cape Hope, I think that's really an auspicious name, because as planet walkers, we walk in the spirit of hope, that the journey that we're on will be part of our learning, as well as an opportunity to be a benefit to all of our living and non-living relations. So those are the thoughts that I have as I begin from Cape Hope, South Africa.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. It is a warm day, warm summer's day here in Cape Town.
Well, hi,
Yeah.
and welcome to the Point of Good Hope, Cape Point. And this is a really auspicious place for me to begin this next Planet Walk South Africa, because planet walking is about learning. It's about journey and pilgrimage. It's about having the hope and the spirit of hope that we can benefit each other and all of life, living and non-living beings. And I started this, back in 1977, which is a long time ago. It was even before that, 1971, when I saw the oil spill out in the ocean, and I just gave up riding in cars and started walking. So this is the continuation. This is the beginning of that journey, which started in California, across North America, on the length of South America, parts of Antarctica, Asia, and now here in South Africa. We're walking to Khartoum as a prayer, as a journey, a pilgrimage, that we are aspiring for all mankind, all humankind, the most outrageous, unreasonable, and amazing outcome of our journey. That we don't know the answers, we don't know where we're going, we don't know what that is going to look like, but that's our aspiration. And planet walkers, we're all planet walkers, and it doesn't matter what color you are, what religion you are, what faith you have. We're all here on the planet, and we're raising the consciousness of the planet that we live on a planet. Life exists here on the planet. So I'm really happy to begin here at the Cape of Good Hope, to make the first steps on a journey that will take me through South Africa and through the rest of Africa, the continent, to Khartoum, and eventually out through Egypt and through the Nile. And there's no more for me to say. I'm going to be quiet now and start walking. So thanks again for being here.